Welcome to the Corner of Knit and Tea, episode 128. My name is Laura. I'm also known as Fluffy K on Ravelry, Fluffy Kira on Instagram and Twitter. I blog at thecornerofknitandtea.com, and that's where this episode and every episode show notes will be. I have an Etsy shop called The Corner of Knit and Tea, where I sell my hand-spun yarns, and we have a Ravelry group called The Corner of Knit and Tea. Hello! I hope you have had a wonderful week. It is Sunday, March 12th, in the middle of the afternoon, and I am recording from my home just outside Kansas City. And I have lots of fun things to talk about today, lots of knitting and spinning content. This week has been pretty good. It was a little busy. My boss came back to work, so his vacation is over, and in some ways a little bit so is mine. I had been catching up on a variety of tasks, but we have meetings and other things coming up. So that was kind of getting back into the week. The weather has been pretty good. It was very warm this week and all the trees budded, which meant, of course, yesterday it was time for snow. We actually just got a light dusting of snow, but it was cold yesterday and it is supposed to be colder today, and they gave us some freeze warnings based on the snow yesterday and that the roads were wet and they thought they'd get icy overnight. So we are staying home today and we have a pot of chili cooking and we're just hanging out and working on things, and I will talk to you a little bit about what I'm working on. So let's start. My tea today was a sample from the Republic of Tea. It is called Organic Pitaya Green Tea. Pitaya is dragon fruit, and so it's a Chinese green tea with dragon fruit. I have not tried it before. This was a sample that came in the catalogs. As I've said before, if you sign up for their catalogs, they come probably every 1 to 2 months, and they have a sample tea in them. So that's kind of fun, and so I have that to test today in my hand warmer mug, which I just love. I have a whole collection of mugs, and I just kind of grab whatever feels good for today, and I thought this one would be nice. So I'm going to try that, although it seems really hot. Ooh, that is good. It's a nice, clean green tea, and then, like I said, there's just a little hint of kind of tropical fruit in there. So that one's a good one if you want to try it out. So let's move on to the knitting. I have a couple finished objects this week. One which I will only be able to show you on my phone. I finished the pink protest hat that I was knitting for my sister's mother-in-law, and I have already mailed it off to her. So I will show you a picture of it there. You could have seen it on my Instagram account too. That was made from the pink hand spun that I spun up just a few weeks ago. And the hat pattern is kind of a mishmash of a bunch of different things. She had picked out a pattern that was on Ravelry that I knit up, and it wasn't going to be the right size for her, and it didn't look like it was going to fit well. So I borrowed some elements of it and some stitch counts from someplace else, and the top of the hat I borrowed from someplace else, and I kind of cobbled together her own hat, which is interesting because when she first came to me, she asked if I thought I could create a super unique hat for her. And my thought was, while I generally don't do a lot of designing on my own, usually I work from patterns and then make some subtle changes. And so that's kind of what I did, but I told her she basically got a unique hat because I had put a bunch of different elements together. So that was the first finished object for this week. And the second finished object, which I was very excited to finish, are my my Conway socks. Now, to discuss this, the yarn I received for free, it was a sample of Manos del Uruguay Alegria from Fairmount Fibers, which is the US distributor. And they sent me a skein for review. I got to pick the color, and I chose this kind of goldenrod yellow. The color is turmeric, and it looks like turmeric powder, a spice. And the pattern that I picked was Conway by Nancy Bush. It was from Knitting on the Road, and my challenge for myself was to knit from my knitting books, which is something that I am doing along with the Passionate Spinner podcast. Tracy Schniffeltier is hosting a Knit From Your Books along. Modifications that I made to the socks, I The socks themselves call for a cast on at a much larger number and a bunch of calf shaping. I skipped that and then just built my leg. I followed through. It is a gusset, it is a heel flap and gusset, and then it is a star toe, which was the first time knitting that star toe for me, but I like it and I think these are going to be great. I have washed and blocked them. I have not worn them, so I can't tell you how the yarn wears. I will say I am really, really pleased with the yarn as I have knit it. I think the stitch definition is just beautiful. It was really, really great on these cables, on the sock. It is nice and soft. It is a blend that I believe will wear well because it is 75% superwash merino and 25% polyamide. The only thing that I could potentially complain about a little bit, and it didn't bother me that much, there was one knot in the skein. As I've said before, industry standard is 2 knots per skein, so I can't really complain about that. And there were just a few spots in the yarn where the yarn wasn't spun as finely. It looked like it was just a little bit thicker than some of the other spots. But other than that, I loved knitting with it. I will see how it wears. And I have to thank Monasterio Uruguay and Fairmount Fibers for sending this to me for review. I will be putting a blog post up probably Tuesday or Wednesday this week about these socks with more pictures and my review of the yarn. But it got thumbs up for me. I would definitely try it. So that is the second finished object of the week. That's pretty exciting for me to have too. The rest are whips, so let's talk about them. I worked on Wednesday. I have been allowing myself on Wednesday to work on my Find Your Fade shawl, and that's a pattern by Andrea Mowry or Drea Renee Knits. I am still in the third color, which is my hedgehog fibers, all that. I have just finished the lace section, and so I have a bunch more of the garter section before I switch colors. Again, I started with a Lammy Toes in the Sweet Tooth colorway. Then I went to Susie Parker Yarns in the it's her BFL twist based in the Tangerine Twist. I am currently in my Hedgehog Fibers All That, and that is her twist sock. And then I don't think I have the tag here. Oh, I brought it with me here. My current yarn is something that I over-dyed. This was Knit Circus Greatest of Ease, and that was a skein that I got in a Kickstarter campaign. It is an 80% superwash merino, 20% nylon, and it was white with speckles, and I ended up over-dyeing it with red and fuchsia, and so this is what it looks like now. It is like a semi-solid, and you can still see some of the speckles under there. So it's got a lot of texture, and I think it's going to be great after this color. And I hope that I will get to that this week. I have one more knit that I really need to finish. It's something that I signed up to do as a test knit. And then once I finish that, my plan is to focus on this for the rest of the month and get this finished. So I'm super excited because this is one of the things that I have been wanting to knit, and I have been allowing myself to knit it as a reward for finishing some of my other responsibilities. That doesn't mean I don't want to knit the other things that I'm working on, but you know how there's a project sometimes where you get super, super into it, and then you have other things that you're trying to finish, and so you use that project that you're super into as the carrot. And my Find My Fade has definitely been the carrot, but I'm excited to move on. So that will be on the docket this week. The fourth thing that I want to show you, and that it's basically the final thing in terms of whips and things like that, is the test knit cowl that I'm working on. I have gotten farther in the project. This again is a test knit for Chrissy Left Side Knits. It is a sport weight cowl, and I am knitting it in Bugga. Unfortunately, Bugga is no longer around. This is the Sanguine Griffin Bugga in the Dragonfly Tattoo colorway, and I am, of course, enjoying knitting with my Bugga, and the pattern is super pretty. You'll be able to see it more once I get it off the needles. I am concerned that I'm going to run a little bit short on yardage, which is my fault, because the pattern actually calls for slightly more yardage than I have. So I haven't decided if I'm only going to do 2 repeats of the chart as opposed to 3, or exactly what I'm going to do. But this one is due by the end of the week, so that is what I will be finishing up this week. My hope is to finish this up in the next day or two, and then get to work on my Find My Fade. And again, this is the yarn that I'm using. It's really pretty. It's not exactly pastels, but it is softer colors over kind of a gray base. So that is what I'm working on. That pattern will probably be released by the end of the month, and I will put a link up to it, and you'll see more finished photos when I get there. So that is my current WIP. And then finally, in needle adjacent projects, I have been showing you those slippers that I have been knitting. I just finished a pair for my husband, and I looked at mine, and mine actually have a hole in them now. So I am using the final skein of my Rhinebeck yarn. This is Cascade 220 in Ireland, and because I only had 1 skein left, and really I needed some others, I went ahead and placed an order and got, this is Cascade 220. I believe the colorway is Heather. It's a heathered purple, and so my slippers will be green and purple. And I want to go ahead and knit these. As it turns out, the most recent washer we bought, washing machine, does not have an agitator in it. So I have been unsuccessful in my attempts to felt my husband's slippers. So my plan at this point is to try and knit the slippers for me in the next week or two, and then take all the slippers to a local laundromat and run them through the washing machine a couple times to felt them. So this is another needle adjacent project, which I will probably wind the yarn for and maybe start this week. My plan is to try and get these done by the end of the month. But basically, if I finish that cowl in the next day or two, I will have slippers and my Find My Fade shawl to finish for the end of the month, and I still have half a month left. So that should be good. So that is the next project on my needles. April has some exciting things. I am going to be working on 2 new designs, and I'm not sure how much I will show on the podcast early on, but I am already in some of my Instagram posts and in other areas when I have asked for feedback. Some of you have told me that you are interested in learning about watching someone's design process. I don't know how early on in the process I will be comfortable talking about it, both because I'm relatively new to designing, and what I see in my head and what I talk about at the front end isn't necessarily how it will end up, and because in general I want to be a very trusting person, but I also don't want to give away too much before I'm before I put my name on it and finish it. It's kind of one of those things like, do I want to put out what I'm doing beforehand? Because I know it's just a few bad apples spoil the bunch, but sometimes in general everyone is very nice and supportive of everybody else, but there are people out there who copy ideas, and so I just never know how early I want to talk about something. All of which is to say, I have been collecting a bunch of things, including images and notes about my inspiration, and my hope is that when I am ready to sort of unveil the design, at whatever point in the process that is, I can talk to you about how I got the idea for the design and what steps I followed in making it a design. So I am working on that. I just don't know exactly when that will be. And I'm sure I will have other things coming up. There has been some talk on the Nanny Swaymo board, that is the National Knit a Sweater Month board, on Ravelry, about potentially doing an additional sweater knit along. National Knit a Sweater Month is in October. It is the corollary to National Novel Writing Month. And a bunch of the people have decided maybe we should knit sweaters over the summer just because it's fun to do it more than once a year. So I'm contemplating sweaters. I still have a couple sweater quantities that I would love to get through. I have a bunch of socks that I would like to knit and sock yarn that I would like to use up. So that is probably what is coming in April. I generally don't do stash enhancement, but I got something really kind of fun and special this week, and so I thought I would just talk about it just a little bit. I mentioned that my boss came back from vacation this week. He went on a 3-week cruise to New Zealand and Australia, and I was totally jealous because I have always wanted to go, and before he left, I teased with him that I wanted him to bring me back a sheep. And he kind of looked at me funny. I mean, he knows that I knit, but he kind of looked at me funny, and I said, obviously it's a joke. Well, actually, the first thing he said is, we're going on a cruise, and I was like, well, there is room in your stateroom, I'm sure. But when I came back, he came back to work Thursday morning, and when I came in on Thursday morning, there was this great bag on my desk. It is from the National Wool Museum, which, as I see, is in Geelong, Victoria, Australia. And he brought me both a pamphlet about the National Wool Museum, which was kind of fun to look through, and then he brought me a little bit of stash enhancement. I'm sorry for the crinkling. He brought me this 8-ply Polworth wool, 205 grams. 8-ply is generally a worsted weight. So my suspicion is that the skein is probably about 400 yards. There actually isn't a lot of information on it. I'll have to go and look at the website. It doesn't even have a color name, but it is this great kind of pinky orange. And I can't wait to do something with that. It will probably be a cowl, maybe a sample of the cowl that I have in mind for designing. But that was super sweet of him and kind of exciting. So I just thought I would show that on the podcast. So sorry for the crinkling and the noise. Put that away down there. Let's take a sip of tea and then we'll get to the spinning. So last week I showed you a braid from Hello Yarn. It was in the colorway Pounce, and it was all kinds of pinks and oranges and browns with a little bit of blue in there. And I finished that up. It spun up beautifully. It is so soft and squishy. It is probably around 300 yards of about sport or DK weight, and it is just super squishy. I did have someone express interest in this, so I'm going to give her the first right of refusal, and then if she wants it, it will go to her. If she doesn't want it, it will go up in the shop. But again, that is Hello Yarn Pounce on Falkland, and that was just a super fun spin. I love spinning Falkland. I loved watching these colors come together, and I am super happy with this skein. So that is this week's spin. For this coming week, I am going to spin another braid from Simply You Fiber Arts. This is the one that I spun 2 weeks ago. No, more than that. 3 or 4 weeks ago for the protest hat. I had someone say, oh my God, can you get another one of those? And I went back to Simply You and said, I have a friend who absolutely loves the braid that I bought. Do you think you could do another one? And this is a good example of how unique the fiber arts and that things are one of a kind. The braid that I got is on a different material, and it doesn't look exactly the same. It is sort of her attempt at it. And I very much appreciate that she did, and I very much understand that a lot of times a lot of what we create is one of a kind, and even when you try and recreate it, you can't entirely. But this is another pink braid. It doesn't have the white spots that the other braid did, and my guess is that's in part the fiber content, because this is merino silk and the other was targi. But it does have the pinks and the reds and a little bit of the purples. And so I am going to be spinning this on commission for someone this week. So I will definitely show you, but this one will not be available in the shop. I will, next week I'll spin something else for the shop. So you'll be able to see that. So that is what will be on the wheel this week. And I think that's about it. For what I have for the podcast this week. I did want to say one other thing. I'm hoping that whoever you are, you're watching this podcast. I got a PM on Ravelry this week about some yarn in my stash. And as I was reading it and like navigating a way to look for the yarn in my stash, something glitched. And when I came back, the message wasn't there anymore. And I don't know if I accidentally deleted it or exactly what happened, but I can't remember who it was from. So if you PM'd me about yarn in my stash, I am incredibly sorry that I did not get back to you this week, because I spent a little time looking for, and I don't think there was a Ravatar on it, So that was part of the problem I was having. I will say that the yarn you inquired about, I did get that, and I did look for that, and it actually is gone already. It was a skein of Lorena's laces from the Loopy U, and I actually either traded it or sold it a while ago. I think I gave it away as a prize on the podcast. So I do not still have it, but if it was you and I did not get back to you this week, I am sorry, and I just wanted to explain why, and I wasn't sure there was much of a better way to explain than just saying that here on the podcast. So, I hope, excuse me, I hope that you have had a wonderful week, and that you are looking forward to another week of crafting, and until we speak again, I will say happy knitting, happy spinning, happy sipping, and I'll see you next time. Thanks!